Hello, my name is Eric Tarr. In this video, I'll be demonstrating the Waves Renaissance channel. This plugin is an all-inclusive general-purpose processor that can perform both dynamics and spectral processing. It's a channel strip including a 4-band equalizer, expander gate, and compressor. In this session, I've used the Renaissance channel exclusively to create a mix of this progressive rock song from the band Lines in the Sky, based in Nashville, Tennessee. Here's an example of what the song sounds like. For demonstration purposes, I'll be focusing on my drum mix. Let's listen to it in isolation. Next, let me take you through a few of the plugins to show you the settings. I'll start out with my kick drum. Here, I'm using two instances of the plugin in series. The first one performs subtractive equalization to really improve the sound by sculpting out the parts that I thought resonated a little bit too much. Then I'm using dynamics processing down here, fast attack, fast release on my compressor to control the level of my kick drum, and then an expander that's going to cut down on some of the bleed. This is what this plugin is doing. And here's the second version of the plugin. This is where I'm doing more spectral enhancement to beef up my low end and give it some of the attack over here. Next, I've got the compressor going, which is going to enhance the transient by using a slower attack, longer release. So here's what this plugin's doing. Next, let's have a look at the snare drum. Here I've got a snare top and snare bottom microphones. Again, two instances of the plugin that have a similar concept. Subtractive equalization in the first instance, and also controlling it with the dynamics here with the fast attack, fast release for the overall level. And then the second version, I'm using more additive equalization to find that fundamental here of my snare drum and also give it some more attack up here at the top. And then adding some compression to bring out that transient. Over here on the snare bottom microphone, I'm also using an expander gate, and I've used a special key input over here to roll off the low frequencies. And I'll have you listen to that. This is used so I can get rid of the kick drum, so I'm not keying in on the kick drum, I'm just keying in on the snare bottom mic. So here's what it sounds like. Here's where I'm listening in just to on my key input or the internal sidechain of my expander. So I'm just rolling off all the lows. So I'm excluding the kick drum, just listening to the high frequencies. Now let's have a look at how I'm using the Renaissance channel with my overheads. Again, there are two stages of processing here. Using the first instance of the plugin to clean things up. I've got some subtractive equalization going to prepare the signal for going into the Renaissance compressor. Here I'm just going for a very gentle compression. Got a ratio set very low, about 1.5 to 1. Got fast attack, fast release, and then I set the threshold just so I'm achieving about 1 to 2 dB of gain reduction. In the second instance of the plugin, all I'm using it for is spectral shaping. I'm rolling off almost all the low frequency energy that would be coming from my kick drum. That's because I've got plenty of energy coming from the close mics for the kick drum. Then I'm using the spectral shaping to add that extra clarity to my overheads. So up here around 9 to 10K, I'm boosting with the peaking equalizer, followed by a low pass filter that's going to make sure to keep things from getting excessively bright. So let's listen to how these sounds. I'll bypass the plugins to begin with and then bring them in. Now let's focus on the room mic. The idea here is to process the signal in a way to achieve that huge, larger-than-life drum sound. The Renaissance channel is great for this. In the first instance of the plugin, I'm using a low-pass filter and high-pass filter to focus on the mid-range. Then I'm sending that signal into the Renaissance compressor. I've got a ratio of 4 to 1 going, medium attack, medium release, and then set the threshold to achieve about 10 to 12 dB of gain reduction. Then I just add it back in after the fact. Let me go ahead and show you what this plugin's doing. So now I've really compressed and crushed my room mic. I have to be careful of a couple things. One is that I don't want it to become too boomy from the kick drum. I also don't want my cymbals to wash out the entire sound. So in the second instance of the plugin, what I'm doing here is using an external sidechain to trigger my room mic off of the snare drum. That way when the snare drum hits, it's going to open up the room sound. Let the snare drum sound huge. But whenever the kick drum hits or whenever the snare drum's not hitting, it's going to back off the amplitude of the room mics so that it never gets to be too boomy or that my cymbals don't just wash out. So here I'm using the expander to take off a few dB whenever the snare drum's not hitting, using the external sidechain coming in on my snare drum key and then rolling off the lows so that I'm only really focusing on the high frequencies whenever the snare drum hits. So let's listen to what this one's doing. And it works great in the context of the rest of the drums. Finally, I've got a couple instances of the plugin on my drum bus over here, doing primarily compression. My first one is a gentle leveler. I've got a low ratio between 2 and 3. Sounds like this. The second instance, I've got a high ratio. This is acting more as a limiter. I've also rolled off the really, really low frequencies with a high pass filter. Sounds like this. Next, let's listen to the drums in context of the full mix. So that's the Renaissance channel. It's great for general purpose processing, including the equalizer, expander gate, and compressor. It has all the necessary features and controls to find on a channel strip.